All right, with that.
Okay. Great. I'd like to call to order the January 6th meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Ms. Brutno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin.
Here.
Mr. Kanziger.
Here.
Mrs. Brose.
Here.
Mrs. Garvey.
Here.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Here.
Let me change my background here for a second, if you all indulge me, and we can. Technology problems. It's not there. So find your closest American flag. If you all join me to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, we have the tax budget hearing. Ms. Brudno, if you'd lead us through this item.
I will. I'm going to share my screen here. Maybe. Okay, can we see that?
See Explorer.
Yeah.
You don't see the budget in front of you?
We see Windows Explorer.
Okay. Let me try this again. Now do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so the tax budget, this is for the next fiscal year. So fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021. This is a requirement under this first page, just lists all the required, the Ohio Revised Code sections. We do have to post this, post a notice in a local newspaper in advance of the public hearing. We did that. It was available for inspection for the last 2 weeks. We have not received any requests for copies of it, but certainly if anybody would like a copy of it, it's always available, and it will be on Board Pack as well. This is all just directions on how to complete it. Right here, I'm going to try to make this a little bigger. Here's the list of all of our levies. This should look very similar to last year. The total number ends up being the same. And again, that's because I know we kind of really beat this message through a lot last year, but this 3.85 mils right here, this is what we passed in November, and that's going to start being collected. And if you look at the bond retirement millage, this in the previous years was 3.85 mils higher. So the 124.1 is the same in total. It's just that the 3.85 mils is added to the general fund collection now, and that debt fell off. So if you were to compare, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. If you were to compare these schedules to previous years, you'll see one less debt issuance here because that debt was paid off December 1st of last year. And then this page that I kind of skipped over, this is all of the other funds. It's very tiny, I know. These numbers right here, the general fund, that's what you see the most often. That's what is in the 5-year forecast. And then these are all of the special revenue funds. So this is just estimating. Of course, we don't know what our unencumbered balance is going to be yet. So we estimate. The county takes these numbers then and uses them to create our initial certificate of estimated resources. And then we amend it once the year is over and we know what the exact dollars are. Are there any questions here? I'll go back up to the millage because that's the most important part. Anybody have any questions, or did anybody hear anything from any, this is supposed to be a public hearing. We can, have people ask questions. I did not receive any requests for comment or anything. So I don't know, Phil or Bob, if you received any.
I did not receive any, no.
Okay.
I did not either.
Okay. Then that's it.
Okay, great. And do we need to vote on that?
That is later on in the meeting.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, next up, we have item 2, the organization of the board for 2021. We have the election of the president. If there are any nominations for president?
I nominate Phil Rankin to serve as president for the year 2021.
I know we don't need a second, but I'll second that. I couldn't find my mute button.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brudno, if you would please take the roll.
We have to close nominations. I believe we have to do a motion to close those, do we not? I believe we do.
I'll
Let's
do a
go.
motion. I'll do a motion to close.
Okay.
I'll second.
Look how smoothly the transition of power.
I know, I love it.
It's a good example.
Okay. I'm going to, when I read your name and call roll, you have to state the name of the person you wish to be president, not just yes. So, Mr. Rankin.
Yes, Rankin?
Mr. Kanzinger.
Yes, Rankin.
Mrs. Rose.
Yes, Rankin.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes, Rankin.
And Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes, Rankin.
All
Yeah, I
right,
actually have to say yes next time.
thank you all very much.
Mhm.
Now, if we can have nominations for vice president, I will nominate Catherine Garvey for vice president. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Sharon. Is there a,
I'll nominate to close the election for vice president.
thank you. It didn't sound right to
Second.
nominate close. All right, thank you, Greg. Okay, Ms. Brudno, if you would please take the vote.
Okay, just state the name that you're voting for. Mr. Rankin.
Garvey?
Mr. Kanzinger.
Garvey.
Mrs. Rose.
Harvey.
Mrs. Garvey.
Garvey.
And Mrs. O'Toole.
Garvey.
All right. Congratulations, Catherine.
As you as well.
Everybody else can take a step forward again. Okay, Ms. Brudno, if you would please now administer the oath of office.
Okay, first is President, Mr. Rankin. Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as President of the Board of Education of the Chagrin Falls Exempted Village School District, Cuyahoga County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I will.
Okay, Mrs. Garvey. Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Vice President of the Board of Education of the Chagrin Falls Exempted Village School District, Cuyahoga County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I will.
All right, fantastic. Okay, now we move on to item C, 2C. Ms. Brudno, could you please go through those items?
I will. Item 1 is the appointment of the board's legislative liaison for 2021. I believe we have that in item 4 as well. So we will go through the name at that point. Item 2 is for the treasurer to execute a bond. The bond currently in effect and what our policy states is $100,000 for me. And then we have position bonds for the board president, the superintendent, and the director of operations and strategic initiatives. Item 3 is the schedule of regular meetings. Those are the first and third Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. Currently, we're staying virtual, but when that ends, back in Lewis Sands Community Room. There are exceptions. The list is attached there to the agenda. Item 4 is board member participation in group benefit plans provided to employees by the district, and the board member pays the full premium. Item 5 is in accordance with section 3315.15 of the ORC. The board service fund is established in the amount of $3,000 from the general fund. The service fund is used in paying the expenses of board members and performance of your duties as official representatives of the district. Item 6 is establishing a records committee that consists of the board president, the superintendent, and the treasurer to review and recommend disposition of district records. And item 7 is allocation of interest earnings on our bank accounts and investments, allocating interest to fund the general fund, the building fund, the food service fund. That's a scholarship fund there. And then 401 is the auxiliary services fund.
Okay, great. Thank you. So is there a motion to approve items 1 through, is it 7? I can't see.
Yes.
Can I make a comment on the proposed meeting schedule? It's completely up to the other members of the board how we want to handle this. March 17th is my husband's birthday, so I would not be at a meeting on that date. It also happens to be an Irish holiday that a lot of people tend to celebrate. So if you want to move it on that account, that's fine. Then I'd be happy to attend any other day that week. But if you all want to go ahead and meet without me, I'm also fine with that.
I'd be fine with moving it.
I'm fine too.
Whatever.
It doesn't sound like anybody has any big objections. Do we want to, let me suggest Tuesday the 16th?
That works for me.
Oops. I say that before I check that I do have a conflict that day. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The 18th, Thursday.
Or do we stick with Wednesday and go to the following Wednesday?
I think the following week is spring break, so that's not a good idea. Does the 18th work for everyone?
I don't know what the school calendar looks like, but it's okay.
Yeah,
Ashley, you guys okay?
yep, we're good.
I believe so.
All right. So Ms. Bruno, if you'd please make that one change from March 17th to the 18th.
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, great. We could have a motion for items 1 through 7.
So moved.
All right. Thank you, Ms. O'Toole. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kanzinger. Ms. Bruno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Burrows,
Yes.
Mr. Kanzinger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
Next, we go to the resolutions, the various resolutions that we approve each year. Now, I believe Dr. Hunt and Mrs. Bruno, these are all typical and normal resolutions that we approve every year. Is that right?
Yes.
They align with practice and policy and are consistent with what we do annually.
All right, given that, I would suggest that we don't walk through them individually, and then we just, if somebody would like to make a motion that we approve 3A1 through item 1 through item 18.
I just have a comment before we approve them, and I'm happy to approve them. I just want to put on the board's radar item 17. We had a lengthy discussion a couple of years ago about the district's role in whether or not council should appear on behalf of the district before the Cuyahoga and Geauga County Board of Revisions. And we decided to not change our practice at that time. I just think we should put it on a future board agenda to see if we want to continue to handle it the way we are currently handling it, or if we want to revisit that practice.
There is, unless it fell away, the House had passed some changes to this and the Senate took it up, but I don't think the Senate passed it. So there may be some changes statewide too.
Yeah. Currently, if we want to file any complaints ourselves, even, on businesses or anything, I am not allowed to fill out that form. That has to be filled out by legal counsel. So we're required to use legal counsel for something. I understand we may want to change our practice on what we choose to file on, but we can't just choose to not use legal counsel.
I think that's what Sharon's talking about. And we did amend our practice to include that language about when we wanted to pursue the suits and when not. So it might be good to put on a future agenda, just an update on, maybe over the last couple of years, we can see what suits have been brought and how they've been handled, and make some decisions about if we're going to change our practice again.
Okay. I'm not sure. Did we have a motion to discuss these and do it? If not, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, second.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Brose. Ms. Brudenov, if you please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Brose,
Yes.
Mr. Kanzinger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, great. Now to the working segment. Call it 4A, but it's the only thing under 4, so I'll call it 4.
And there's also the calendar and the board governance document under 4. They're just way down there.
Okay. You're correct. My bad. All right. So 4A, we have the board committees. So I know that I appreciate everybody's input, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't just miss it. Were you able to send one in, Sharon, or do you want to go over that now? Okay.
I was not able to send one in. There have been some extenuating circumstances in the Brose household in the last week, but so I'm flexible. I'll do, for the most part, whatever you ask me to do.
I was going to say, I was about ready for the blank endorsement, but you didn't quite
You're
get
on every committee.
I've been sitting in this seat long enough to know better than to do that.
I think we would have gotten a almost unanimous vote on that. All right, so we've got the board audit committee, 2 members from the board, and I know that Mary Kay, you'd expressed an interest in that. Maybe you and I could do that one.
Sure.
It's the top of the list. It's the most.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't put a star. I just gave it an X, but that's okay.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
You are one of the most qualified.
yes. Yeah. Just to let everybody know, there aren't any particular, there's a lot of X's. There aren't a whole lot of stars. So
Yeah.
the whole group, I appreciate everybody's flexibility, because everybody was willing to be flexible about what we do, cover the base. So I appreciate that. It's a good working group. All right. So we'll go with Mary Kay and me on the audit committee. Let's see. And the board policy committee. We had Greg and Mary Kay. Everybody's all right.
Fine.
All right. Let me ask you, Ms. Brudno, are you keeping track of these? Otherwise, I'm writing them down.
Yeah, I'm writing them down as we go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Capital Planning Committee. We have Catherine and Greg express an interest in that. Anybody else? All right, we're good. Congratulations. Next up, Board Finance and Budget Committee. Got Catherine and Mary Kay.
I mean, does Sharon want a board committee though? I mean,
Yeah, I'm happy to do the board finance and budget.
Perfect. Yep. And on these, if I remember right, we're all okay to go. We just are members and don't lead the discussions.
Correct. Board committees are public meetings. They can be attended by as many board members who want to attend.
Right. Okay. Good. Next up, we have the Board Policy Committee.
we
Oh,
did
we already
that.
have that.
We did that.
Oh,
We
yeah.
did Business Advisory Council we need to do.
Okay.
Which I'm happy to continue to do. That's really just through the ESC. I have started to participate virtually in those meetings, which is kind of interesting. So unless somebody else wants to. Don't all raise your hand at once.
All right. For the negotiations, we're going to table that one for right now until we understand the landscape a little better, if that's all right. Okay.
Bill, can we go through these? Do you have board pack open?
Yes.
Can you go through them in that order? Because I don't have the Excel spreadsheet open.
Okay.
Moving
Yep.
forward. We're good with board committees.
We did
Okay.
the Business
Yes,
Advisory Council, Phil, not Business Advisory Committee.
Well, the Business Advisory Council is handled through the ESC, correct?
That's one we just talked about. He jumped down to the Business Advisory Committees on board pack.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I did miss that one up there. The Business Advisory Council. So ESC.
That's what I thought I was volunteering for, that I have been doing. We work with the Northeast Ohio Educational Service Center to provide outreach to the local business community that helps guide our educational curriculum and plan for the future. You might remember I gave a report about the economy back, I think it was in November. They had a speaker talking about the impact of COVID on the ability of our students to get jobs here locally. So it's that type of work helps us, again, inform our instruction of our students and prepare them for life after high school.
So I don't believe then that is actually a board committee. That's an ESC committee. If it were a board committee, we would have to keep minutes. We would have to send out notification of meetings and that type of thing. So I believe that's just.
Do you want to weigh in on that?
I think she put it in both under superintendent and board. We're required by law to have a business advisory council. It should be under superintendent. Now the ESC does put out minutes, but it does we don't notice it. So I think it does make sense to put it under the superintendent advisory committees. And we essentially just move that down from board committee and get rid of business advisory committee locally.
I'll tell you what, I'd be happy to do both. So that way, once you go through policy and clean that up, it's easy to know who the board rep is. But I mean, I know we have some really great local businesses that meet with us and stay very much in tune to what's happening in the school district. And then we also have the ESC in parallel. So I recall us passing a resolution to hold our council through the ESC. So maybe we could just do a little research and go back and double check on that board action.
I will do that. We did approve a resolution on that a few years back, so I can pull that. I would just to get through this, I would just designate Mrs. Garvey for both of those. And I would move it down for now. And if we need to come back, we can, have that conversation publicly.
Okay.
And you just need to do the records committee. Then I think you're done with board committees.
Right. Yep. Okay. So I'll take the board records committee.
Yeah, that one by definition is the president.
Okay. It's my favorite committee.
Easiest one.
Don't tell everybody.
Well, aside from audit committee, I think that was pretty easy too.
I don't know. I just read 100 and how many pages of the report for.
I'm not sure our viewership is very high tonight anyway.
Yeah. I'm sure we're dropping quickly now. All right, moving on. Superintendent's advisory committees. We've already discussed the business advisory committee. Ms. Garvey's going to take that one. I've already talked about the negotiations. We're going to table that. Next up, we have the new advisory committee, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And
I would like to participate in that. If I know we want to add a second, unless someone else strongly wants to be the second.
I think that Miss Garvey, you were involved with that from the beginning too, right?
Yes, I'd like to remain. I think we're just partway into our work. Although I see this as a standing committee, we'll probably have year over year. So everybody will get a chance to participate.
Right. Okay. We good? Okay. Next, healthcare committee. Got two folks here. I think I know Sharon and Mary Kay, you were on that before.
I'm happy to do it again.
I am as well.
All right, fantastic. Next, senior council. Catherine expressed an interest, as did Mary Kay.
I don't know. I've done it a number of years. I'm happy to let someone else do it if they want, whatever.
Okay.
I don't know if they're having any meetings. I don't think we're bringing seniors in this year. So.
No, we're actually talking about trying to do something virtually. Second semester, I would not anticipate bringing them in second half of the year.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Garvey has that one. Next, we have strategic planning committee. Ms. Garvey, Mr. Kanzinger, both express an interest in that. If everybody's good with.
Last year. Sorry, I got put on hold once COVID hit.
And you did a great job, Greg. All right. Okay. So if we're all good to stay there as well. Okay. Next, the OSBA, Student Achievement and Legislative Liaison.
Did you get technology, or is that, I'm not looking at the board pack list.
That's not on the board pack list, but it's on our list.
Bob, do we still have a technology liaison?
We have a technology group. I don't know that we've, Greg, I think you were on that committee for a while. I don't remember if that was a board member or just a community member.
As long as I've been on the board, we've had a board member liaison. I remember Rob Weber did it at one point.
Yeah, so that would go under, added under superintendent committees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a technology committee?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I assume so. We'll take one board member there, and Mr. Kanzinger.
Yep, I can do it.
You're probably the most qualified, considering I have troubles making it to Zoom meetings sometimes.
So do I.
All right. Let's see. And then we have okay, so I'm sorry. Did we name the Student Achievement and Legislative Liaison?
Did not.
Okay. I'm happy to do that one. Next up we have, okay, we're going to defer this next one to the June meeting, the delegate and alternative delegate for OSBA. Moving on, liaison to support organizations, Chagrin Falls Alumni Association. Catherine and Mary Kay were interested in that. Do we have one? Do we have one person?
Yeah,
Just one. Yeah, whatever. I don't.
I'm fine
right.
either way.
Me too. We can
All
come
right.
back to it. See who gets to with the other ones. I don't care.
That's okay. You didn't have too many extra, Catherine. Why don't you take that one?
Okay.
And then we had next up is the Chagrin Falls Boosters, to which Mr. Kanzinger volunteered. Everybody okay with that? Okay. The Dad's Club. Let's see. I'm happy to do that one. I actually used to belong to the organization, haven't been as involved recently. And Mr. Kanzinger, I think your years there are measured in dog years, so you've got about 100 in that organization. Okay. Next,
Their meetings sound kind of fun to me, I gotta be honest.
it was usually
A
pretty
meeting
good.
at Plaza Agave is kind of exciting.
Don't let all my secrets out.
Especially on Cinco de Mayo. That was one of the noisier meetings.
Why isn't there a mom's club?
Hey, no one's stopping it. And moms are welcome to the Dad's Club meeting.
Yeah, if you look at the pictures of the gurney, I think they're on the school website right now, or maybe they were in the Super News. You'll see some females out there helping build the outdoor. Is that the outdoor playground work? Am I
No.
remembering that?
Outdoor classroom.
Outdoor garden.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Oh.
say garden, but it wasn't a garden. It was.
No, it was a garden.
It was.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. It was the
Okay.
garden in the outdoor classroom. Ah. Greg and I have built gardens before for the school in the middle
Yeah.
school courtyard.
So is that what that's called, the courtyard? I guess it would be called the courtyard.
I
Yeah.
think so, whatever that is.
Awesome. All right, moving on, the Education Foundation. Catherine and Greg, both raise your hands there. Catherine, do you want to take that one?
Sure.
Is that all right, Greg?
That's fine.
Next up, Music Lovers. We don't have anybody
Aaron
raising
did
it.
it last year.
And I'm happy to continue.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next up is the PTO. And Mary Kay.
Sure. Do that
You-
one.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Next is Spark.
If it's okay.
All right, Sharon, you got it. And lastly, but not least, we have Tiger Prep and Mr. Kanzinger.
Yep.
Everybody okay?
Mhm.
All right, great. Okay, next up, we have community stakeholders, and we have Chagrin Athletic Association.
You can probably put CAA and CSA together with the
Right.
same person. We've kind of traditionally done that.
I mean, I'm happy to do that one. Okay, great. Next, Chagrin Valley Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Kanzinger
fine.
and Mary Kay.
Whatever. Greg's welcome to have a turn if he wants.
All right, it's yours, Greg.
All right.
Okay, the Rec Center Council. Let's see here. All right,
Karen, have
nobody.
you done that before?
I was just gonna say, I don't know if anybody volunteered for that, but I'd be happy to do that.
I've done that years ago.
I did as
Okay.
well, but I feel like you're more connected to younger families at the rec at this point than I am. Even though there's the Garby Gaga pit, which my daughter reminds us of regularly.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to visit with the younger set, the preschool moms.
There you go. Sounds great. All right. Thank you, Sharon. Next is safe routes.
I can continue with that if you'd like.
Fantastic. And next up, so we're going to go through the villages. So we have first Bainbridge. See, does anybody live in Bainbridge? I can take Bainbridge. Next, we have Bentleyville.
I'm happy to continue doing the ones I was doing, which I think is Bentleyville, Chagrin Falls, and Moreland Hills. But if someone else wants to do them, I'm happy for them to do it as well.
I wouldn't mind doing Chagrin Falls just because I haven't interfaced with that body.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Okay. Sounds great. And Moreland Hill. Oh, that's right. So you'll take Moreland Hills too. What about South Russell?
I'll take it unless anyone else wants it.
You got it. Thank you, Mary Kay. All right. Does everybody feel adequately committed? All right, Ms. Brudno, if you wouldn't mind just, following up on the meeting, if you wouldn't mind. I know we'll do it in the minutes, but if you wouldn't mind just emailing out that kind of matrix to all of us, just so we're all reminded what we signed up for.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Okay, next.
Oh, sorry, there's 2 other areas to update, which we can assist in, and that's on the website. The website committee descriptions, and then our own profiles. We probably want to provide an update with this year's people.
I'll do that. I also draft letters that go to the organization presidents, kind of informing them of the board member that, they should reach out to if there's any concern or anything involving the school as well. So we'll go ahead and prepare those letters.
Great. Wonder if it's appropriate that we all list as an accomplishment surviving 2020. Wonder if that's something I can put on my resume. I don't know. It is an accomplishment.
Certainly feels like it.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Next up, we've got the Super News schedule. I think it's in a pretty good random order. I know I'm on the front, on the bookends of it.
I thought it looked fine from my perspective.
Okay.
We can always trade if we need to, if something were to come up that would make it difficult for someone to write the article.
Right. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Moving on, a board and governance manual. Let's see, are there any changes to this?
There were no changes other than dates.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
it's just annually, we should look it over and sign it to that we agree to. These are our guiding principles. So I don't know if they want to virtually sign it since we're not all together or what, but I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, actually, Ms. Brudno, so I know we don't do DocuSign, but what about the application that we use to send around for salary changes that I'm involved with? Would that work?
Possibly. I'm not the expert on the system, but I can ask. Delia and Kelly are the experts on that. I don't see why they couldn't add it.
Yeah, maybe we could check that out. I don't know if everybody's familiar with like a DocuSign type of application, but yeah, very similar where, you can see the electronic document, and then it'll record your electronic signature. So yeah, that might be good.
Well, we haven't done this before, but what if I just read the 15 statements, not the body of them, but the overall? Because I think so many people watch these meetings and don't really have a full understanding of what the board does. It may help for them to hear those. Or of course they can read them in the minutes and in the agenda if you want to keep moving on.
You're just going to read like the bolded sections, I assume?
Right.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not the whole
Fine.
thing.
Not the whole 3 pages. Okay.
So I'll
Otherwise-
just
Volunteer to take like, 5 through 10. Okay, yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing that, I think that's a great idea.
okay. So we all agree that children's interests come first. We will prepare for board meetings. We don't spring surprises on each other. We debate the issues and not one another. We exemplify the governance role. We speak to agenda issues only. We remain transparent and open with stakeholders. We follow the chain of command. We encourage others to own their own issues. We provide executive and closed sessions for certain topics that are provided by law. We have good communication with staff and the board. We conduct regular board assessments and appraisals. We set clear goals. We utilize our CEO's input and our treasurer's input, our CFO's input. The board acts only as one body, not as individual board members. We have equal representation and vote, regardless of whether you're president or vice president. We each get 1 vote, and we fulfill the fiduciary duty of the board.
Yep. I agree to all those. I mean, they're very good statements. It does capture well what we do here and the approach that we have towards our governance role. So that's good. Okay, unless anybody has something else for the organizational section of our meeting, I would take a nomination to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second.
Second.
Great. Thank you, Ms. O'Toole. Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Brose,
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. I do remember a year ago how much I fumbled through this agenda, and I still fumble a bit on it now, but hopefully it was better than last year.
You did a great job, Phil.
Mhm.
Well, you guys make it very easy. Actually, Ms. Brudno makes it very easy to keep. All right, I'm going to call to order the January 6th, 2021 meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Do we want to take a roll again, Ms. Brudno?
Oh, sure, why not? Mr. Rankin,
Here.
Mrs. Garvey,
Here.
Mrs. Brose,
Here.
Mr. Kanziger,
Here.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Here.
And although this is probably the only time I would ever suggest this, I would say we've already done the Pledge of Allegiance. I love to say it, but we can probably skip it for the second time tonight, unless anybody really wants to do it. All right. Moving on. Approval of minutes. We have the minutes for December 9th, 2020 and December 15th of 2020. Is there any discussion of those minutes? All right. Seeing none, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved. Or-
Second.
Man, you rapid fire, Greg.
I
All
got
right.
I was
All right.
clearing up who approved it.
That's great. All right, Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Brose,
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Moving on, onto the board reports. So we'll give an update to the committee if you've had any action. If you haven't had any, then you can just pass it on. So the audit committee, Ms. O'Toole.
Well, the Auditor of State's Office has completed the financial audit for fiscal year ended June 30th, and an exit conference is scheduled for tomorrow, January 7th at 5 p.m. Members of the Board of Education and the Audit Committee are invited, but note this isn't an Audit Committee meeting, it's a meeting, it's the auditor's exit conference, so it is not subject to sunshine laws and things like that. But we will go over the comprehensive annual financial report and any audit findings and things like that. And once the audit is accepted by the state of Ohio, then it becomes a public document and will be searchable on the Auditor of State's website, and we will be able to talk about it. So that's about it for tonight. So tomorrow should be a very exciting meeting.
We all received an invite to that. Is that something, Ashley and Mary Kay, you want full board attendance at, or was that just out of courtesy?
They invite all board members. They also invited all of the committee members. It doesn't matter. You have, you've seen the drafts, you know what's in the report. I don't think it's necessary. You're more than welcome. It will not be an exciting meeting.
Which is the way
if
we want
post-audit
it.
meetings are exciting, that's a bad thing.
Yes.
So
I'll be attending as the new vice president as well. And yes, you're right, Ashley. The last thing we want is for anything from the audit to create excitement. It's good to have it be quite boring and streamlined, and we know there are no surprises.
it will be boring. It is a formality. It's mostly for the audit committee members to really see what, the auditors do, what their opinion means, and, to ask them any questions.
Right. Yeah, I can tell you, even though we're not going to discuss it, I read the report, and it is boring, that is an accomplishment. That's what we want. That isn't a kind of unqualified opinion is what you want.
Right. Okay. End of audit committee report. Moving on, policy committee met December 16th at 9 a.m. We're recommending tonight adjustments to 5 policies, which are on for first reading tonight. I gave you all a little synopsis of what the changes are, but we can go through them again when we get to that part of the agenda if you'd like, or if you have any questions. But they're minor adjustments.
Okay.
And that's the end of my policy committee report.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Garvey on Business Advisory Committee and Capital Planning.
There's no report for business advisory, and for capital planning, we did meet back in November, and we updated the charter for the committee, mostly reflecting the change in terminology for certain documents and subcommittees that we have. So that was approved by that committee, and providing it to the board tonight as an update to our already approved charter from the board perspective. With regard to board finance and budget committee, I also have no report this evening. So I'll move it on to you, Phil, for records retention.
All right. Thank you very much. And I have no report for record retention. Okay, great. Next, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Hunt.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. Just wanted to give you a brief update on our return to school and answer the questions that the Board of Education may have. Notification went out on Monday, the 4th, of our kind of proposed plan for the rest of January. And essentially that is that we would bring back K-6 students in person for full day instruction while continuing to offer the virtual academy on January 11th. Also on January 11th, return the 7-12 students to a hybrid model, as well as continue to offer virtual academy. I would point out that we did distribute a survey to our 7-12 families. There was a lot of fluctuation between models kind of towards as we approached winter break. So we're trying to get a kind of a better understanding on where our parents and our students are going to be going forward for the rest of the year. And also gain an understanding, especially at the high school level, how many students are going to retain or maintain themselves on campus during the lunch period. So the goal then is to target for January 19th, which is a Tuesday. Martin Luther King Day is the 18th, so we return on Tuesday that week. We would continue with K-6 in the same model, and we would return all students enrolled in the full day option for instruction Monday through Thursday, while retaining Friday as a virtual day. Obviously continuing with the virtual academy as we go forward. So a couple of questions that have come up and maybe addressed tonight. One seems to be concern around lunch period and what that looks like. So I thought I'd talk briefly through what that looks like in the various buildings. At Gurney, students have 30 minutes for lunch. Each grade level eats at different times throughout the school day. They eat inside the Gurney gym. They sit in assigned seats by the homeroom, and there's actually 2 seats per table. They're spaced 6 feet apart, and they're all facing the same direction with table shields around them as well. Staff comes around, helps with collection of trash, so students are getting up and interacting. And then in between each period, the tables are sanitized for the lunchroom. In terms of recess, another area of concern, students are wearing masks. They're divided into 3 actually groups for recess. So there's the front playground area, back playground, and soccer field. Each group has their own bag of recess materials that's sanitized, and groups are obviously supervised by our staff members. So that's Gurney. At Chagrin Falls Intermediate School, a little bit different. They attend lunch and recess by grade level. They're splitting the grade levels in half. So half will be on the playground and half will be eating lunch. In the lunchroom, students are seated with their homerooms as well. At the halfway point, lunch and recess, just with those 2 groups would switch. Before they switch, the tables are actually sanitized, and the students, the round tables are divided in 4, and actually the dividers are shifted, so a student is not sitting in the same place where another student was prior to them coming to the lunchroom. During recess, masks are worn in both elementary buildings. In terms of the middle school, they eat by grade level, 7th grade and 8th grade separately. Students are going to sit 6 feet will sit apart, 6 per long cafeteria table, just to give you perspective, with the same students sitting in the same places each day. They'll have dividers around them, and at least at a minimum 3 feet distance between each students. Most of this is box lunches where students would go through and they could pick it up. There is some hot foods in the box lunches as well, and there's additional precautions for monitoring students going the hallway and things of that nature. We will still offer recess. However, it won't be kind of everybody in the gym. They've identified art room, Project Lead the Way, makerspace, library, gym, and they're splitting kids up in those areas to keep appropriate distance. High school is a little bit kind of in motion still in terms of planning, because part of that survey is asking which students will remain on campus. Right now, we only have about 40% of our students that have committed to say they're going to remain on campus. The rest are going to leverage open campus and try to go home and eat lunch. So they have the ability to leave for lunch. It's the only building that obviously provides that. If a parent does not want them to stay for lunch, that can be arranged. Students, when we have the actual kind of numbers in, we'll divide areas up between the commons, the high school gym, and the library, and we'll assign students accordingly to, honor and put in place social distancing with dividers and things of that nature. Once students are assigned to an area, they will be in that area for at least the quarter. That will help with any contact tracing that may come about that we need to do. So that's really kind of the plan going forward. That's how we will manage lunch. I think the last thing I wanted to report tonight was in the media, Governor DeWine, I think it was last week, tweeted out a change or potential change regarding quarantine, and essentially stated that if you're in a classroom setting, in other words, within, the four walls of a classroom, and you are wearing masks and adhering to social distancing without any clarification on what that means, but adhering to social distancing, we no longer have to quarantine students that interact with a student or a staff member that tests positive. So we've tried to ask and garner some clarification from both Geauga and Cuyahoga. Geauga is hesitant to support that recommendation. I think part of this was because there were school districts in Ohio that if you had one positive case, they automatically blanketed and quarantined the entire class. We have not done that. We've gone through contact tracing and trying to only quarantine those students that we felt were within 6 feet for more than 15 cumulative minutes. So I have not made a decision, or I'm not making a recommendation on changing quarantine procedures right now. I do have a meeting with Cuyahoga County Health Department on Friday, so we'll hear what they have to say. I will tell you that there are some districts that are just kind of taking that blanket advice and saying that means if something happens in a classroom and students were in masks, they essentially don't quarantine anybody, students or staff. I'm just not there yet, and want to hear from at least Cuyahoga County Health Department as well.
Bob, the CDC also changed, this was before DeWine's statement. I think it was a few weeks before break. Didn't they change their recommendation for quarantine from 14 to 10 days? And is the district changing based on that recommendation or no?
Yeah, the CDC did change from 14 to 10. Again, Geauga County did not support that recommendation. We, Jen Banco, Chris Wolfter, and I are meeting on both quarantine and our, in terms of classroom and our period, in terms of days. I probably will have something in this week's board report or early next week regarding any modifications that we're going to make to quarantine, but both of those things are up for discussion.
And is it true that Governor DeWine said that he wants all students in person in March? And can he enforce that, meaning we would no longer offer a virtual academy, or is that still at the district level?
I believe that would be very tough for him to enforce right now. I think we have the authority there. There's certainly, I think, pressure to get more students back into buildings. And he did basically say that, part of the rationale for him pulling back on this is they did a study in Southern Ohio on classrooms in terms of spread and quarantining, and that's why he's basing the recommendation in terms of classrooms. However, he also said those are preliminary results, so they haven't been finalized yet. So rather than jumping on board, I just want to pause and kind of see where this plays out a little bit before we make a recommendation.
Right, and the governor did say that's like his goal, but he said it's up to the individual school districts to make their decisions.
I have a couple of follow-ups with regard to the high school, just questions that I've gotten from parents about the open campus. So not all high school students can drive yet. Are you anticipating a pickup drop-off around the lunchtime for students who don't live close enough to walk?
Yes.
Okay. And then I assume students don't have to go home. They could also walk into town and pick up a to-go order of lunch or something and eat on their way back up to the campus.
Yeah, I think that's probably well, they're a lot quicker than I am. So yeah, as long as they can, get down and back in 50 or 55 minutes. I don't know what the exact.
Okay. And then of course we'd be advising them if they are doing that in groups to wear their masks and social distance and stay safe. And then the final concern I've heard is that with the delay to going back in person after the holidays and New Year's, I think that was really applauded and by the community. But one concern is that there have been families that have traveled and are still away. And so they will be returning from perhaps places that have more disease than we have here or have been with family members. And then heading back into the building. Have you got any advice for those families that might be just returning this coming weekend from being out of state?
My personal advice would be if they're in a state that has that, what I think it's over 14% transmission rate, that they're identified as a state that they would contact us in quarantine. I would ask them to quarantine if they made that decision to travel into those states.
Hey, Bob,
They
have you
can
heard?
do that and then
Yeah.
come back into the, in-person setting very seamlessly. So that might be something to communicate more broadly as a consideration for families.
I'll add.
What was that 14% figure? That's the transmission rate in the state?
No, I think that's, I don't hold me to that. I think that's the threshold where Ohio identifies that as an at-risk state, that we shouldn't be traveling to and from. And if you come back, you should be quarantined.
But so basically you're saying if you're on that Ohio list of identified states.
Correct. Go ahead, Greg. I'm
Hey,
sorry.
Bob, is the health department talked about like the new strains that are supposedly more contagious?
It was brought up, and it was brought up in context of the vaccine, that they believe, and what they're hearing is the vaccine still applies to that new strain. They did not talk about the aggressive nature of, at least what I've heard in the media. Don't have a whole lot of information on that. Probably,
Okay, so
I should probably address vaccine as well. We have from Geauga County been contacted to start to prepare a list of staff members, teachers, frontline workers that would be in the kind of the next phase in terms of priority for vaccination. So we have started that work with our staff, finding out who would be willing to take it or interested, and then looking at the criteria of their pre-existing conditions, things of that nature, to start to make a list and prioritize. So that's another project that we're working on. So we're prepared if one of two scenarios, if it gets to a point where they have reached that level and they can come and they can do a mass distribution of vaccination at our campus, or if on a given day they have 15 extra and they want to call a school and say, do you have 15 employees? So we're prepared and have that ready to go. I think a lot of people are hopeful and want to take this. So I think some staff, really thought, well, that must be coming right now. I think the number I heard from Geauga County was they've only received 300 or so doses in the first round here. So I don't think it's imminent, like this is going to happen in January. They drop March, April, gets us more in line with when that might be. But they certainly are recognizing that having staff vaccinated, bus drivers, certainly would help with being able to stay in school on a regular basis.
Okay. And Bob, for students, do students have the ability to bring their lunch to school?
Yeah, absolutely. They do. They would just be assigned. They just would be assigned to one of those areas, and they would be asked to eat their lunch there.
Gotcha.
I think that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. So good plan. And it seems like it's and the feedback so far from the staff, Bob, as far as how everybody's coming back. I know that I know I've seen, but if you just wouldn't mind commenting on how many cases we've been notified of, and do you believe notifications have been pretty forthcoming?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think what we heard over winter break, that was all reported in the letter I sent out on Monday. I believe it was 10 student cases and 2 staff. I do believe we have an issue with a youth basketball team that's either is coming out today or will come out tomorrow. But I think this next week is going to be, pretty informative to our, what our next steps might be, and if that January 19th is a realistic date for return or not. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see and gauge that as we go.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thanks. Next up, we have screen froze, but I believe we have public comment next.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so obviously at this point in the meeting, we always welcome public comment to our open meetings here. I know I have not received any requests for people to join the meeting or for me to read their comments. Have you, Dr. Hunt?
I have not.
Okay, Ms. Brudno?
I have not.
All right. Okay. Moving on then. Can I have a motion for consent agenda items 7A through 7F?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you. All right. Is there any discussion on these items?
Bob, are you still looking for substitutes if anybody is able?
Yeah, we certainly would. You know, we're in really good shape right now compared to where we were. And we were able to get some people on board. But I think this next month's going to be, you know, constantly a challenge. So if people have an interest, you know, we really appreciate the support and help.
And you said it just requires that you have a college degree?
Bachelor's degree.
Bachelor's degree, okay.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Burrows,
Yes.
Mr. Kanzinger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right. Great. Moving on to superintendent's recommendations. If I could have a motion for item 8A through 8B.
So moved.
Mr. Kanzinger in a second.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. O'Toole. Dr. Hunt, if you wouldn't mind addressing these items.
Sure. Item A is related to the necessary certification for administrators to be credentialed to complete teacher evaluations through the Ohio State Teacher Evaluation System. So we had 2 administrators that licenses were expiring and had to recertify. So that requires board approval. Item B is the recommendation that Mrs. O'Toole spoke to regarding policies. This is a first reading. Mary Kay, or Ashley, I know there's some financial things here. Probably the only significant change I would point out is interscholastic extracurricular eligibility. Typically, in a given year, that we would require athletes carry 5 classes. The state of Ohio actually, or 5 credits. I'm sorry, not 5 classes. The state of Ohio actually backed away from that due to the COVID, and that's part of this recommendation. And we believe our conditional eligibility that we do kind of weekly and it's monitored with our teachers through the athletic department certainly is appropriate and continue to monitor, making sure that our athletes are getting done in the class to get done.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions on any of the other policies?
Actually, I just have a quick question on the petty cash. I don't necessarily see it addressed in the policy, but what is the amount of petty cash that we hold?
We
don't have
I would
any.
like to get rid of this policy altogether because we do not use petty cash currently. The former policy said, I believe it directed the treasurer to establish petty cash accounts. There's really no need for those now that we have credit cards in the district.
Right.
We have cash accounts used for change for the athletic department and food service, but we don't have petty cash accounts. We don't use those anymore. They encouraged sort of skirting the purchase order process. Purchase orders used to be a cumbersome process where it took 3 weeks to get a purchase order. Now everything is online, so there's no need for those petty cash accounts. Even in an emergency, we can get things through extremely quickly. So we don't have any.
Yes, we go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say you answered my question. As a former auditor, yeah, I always see petty cash. And it's risk. Cash is risk. Glad to hear.
We would have gotten rid of the policy, but it is still a required policy. So we said, okay, we'll just say we'll keep it, and then someday it'll go away.
The answer keeps getting better all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Nope, that's the only.
Seeing the athletic eligibility reminds me that we approved the PE waiver policy, and with the onset of COVID, I think it would go into effect with the students who are selecting their classes for next year.
Correct.
Not to put you on the spot, but Bob, either tonight or at the next meeting, could you provide us with an update on that? And I know it's still confusing with COVID, how that would even work, but.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for a draft of the course selection guide now to make sure it's in there. And I will be able to kind of report back to you a little bit, but we are putting a little more, I guess, communication to that front in the course selection guide. And I would anticipate more students kind of pursuing that as a option going forward. We did cancel, obviously, summer school last year. We had about 21 or 22 students who wanted to just keep their money in and roll into it for next year. So there are students that still have an interest in that. So we're trying to figure that piece out as well. But after I get the work through the course selection guide, when I show that to the board, I'm happy to talk more specifically about it.
Sounds good. And if parents had any questions, they could ask Ms. Asher or the guidance department.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. Any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mr. Kanzinger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
Right. Great. Moving right along, if I could have a motion for Treasurer's Recommendation 9A.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Garvey. And a second.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kanzinger. Ms. Brudno, if you wouldn't mind speaking to this item.
Yep. The only item tonight is donations. We have 3 donations, all from Ganley Chevrolet of Aurora. There's an $850. This one we wrote reimbursement because they wanted us to make the purchase, and then they reimbursed us for the purchase was actually more than the $850, but that was the amount that they committed. $500 for the athletic department and $1,000 for the volleyball program. I'm recommending your approval.
All right. Fantastic. I don't know if anybody else has had a chance to listen to the podcasts, but they're very good. I've listened to at least 2 of them. How many are there, Bob?
At least 2.
All right. I've listened to every single podcast there is.
The 3rd one will be going out on Friday.
Excellent.
Actually, yeah, Friday this week.
Yeah, they're very good. And Victor, correct?
Correct.
He does a very good job at it. It's informative and entertaining. So
taking it serious for sure.
Yes, absolutely. But no, definitely don't want to understate our appreciation for Ganley Chevrolet of Aurora for all these donations. Great supporter of the schools. So any other discussion, lighthearted or not? All right, great. Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mr. Kanzinger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, great. Any other business anybody would like to bring up? Okay. Seeing none, our next meeting is January 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. on this same Zoom channel. So now I believe if Mr. Kanzinger would like to make a motion for executive session.
Let me, Ms. Garvey, know.
Yes.
So in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22, the Chagrin Falls Board of Education will go into executive session for the sole purpose of the consideration of employment. Do we have a second?
Yeah, if there's a second.
Second, and I have to say, Greg must be very good at hot potato because that was an instant.
Excellent. All right. Well, as Kristen will definitely agree, I am a creature of habit. So there you go. We'll see how many meetings it takes me to get that under. Remember that. All right. Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes. And I'll just add, we do not anticipate any action coming out of executive session.
Very well done. All right, the final motion of the evening. I think this is like number 20. Adjournment tonight?
And
You
we don't
cannot
adjourn until
until-
after the executive session.
All right, steal my thunder. We'll do it later.
Don't be so hard on yourself, Phil.
You know, that's the part I look forward to the most every meeting. No, I look forward to, well, I won't say whether it's Bob or Ashley's reports. They're all very good.
Mind if we take a quick 2-minute break before we head into executive session while we stop the video?
It's fine with
Okay,
me.
all right. Thanks, guys.
Let us know when we're off, please.
So Bob, does he have like a guest list that goes out a half a year, or?
We have a list. Definitely. We are going to interview. I'm just trying to find out if we shut down. We're going to interview Mark Imarino on Friday. And we're going to interview Brian McKenna to talk about Tom Mattern on Friday.
Nice.
And I can't disclose anything beyond